Okay, so you want to buy a cruise ship. Order the biggest one they make, fill it with paying passengers, sail it in a circle, and sell them pina coladas the whole way around. But here's the strange part. A cruise ship is one of the only businesses on Earth where the ticket isn't the product. You can sell someone a week-long voyage for less than the cost of a budget hotel, and still make more money per passenger than almost any resort on land. And it's also the business that got so close to total collapse in 2020 that the biggest operator on the planet had to borrow $26 billion just to keep its empty ships from sinking the company. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how both of those things are true. How a cruise ship actually makes its money, which is almost never where you think, why a ship that's completely full can still lose a fortune, and why a modern cruise ship isn't really a boat at all. It's a shopping mall that floats, and you're not allowed to leave. Cruise ships come in 3 sizes, and they're 3 completely different businesses. At the bottom is a small luxury or expedition ship, 100 to 300 passengers, sailing to places the big boats physically cannot reach. That'll cost you roughly $100 to $300 million. Low volume, high price per head, rich clientele. In the middle is a standard ocean cruiser, 2,000 to 3,000 passengers, the kind that runs the Caribbean every single week, $500 million to $1 billion. And then there's the mega ship, where the numbers stop making sense. Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas launched in 2024 for around $2 billion. It carries up to 7,600 passengers. It has 8 neighborhoods, 7 pools, and its own water park. It is the largest cruise ship ever built, and it is less a vessel than a small city that happens to be buoyant. But the purchase price is just the start. There are 2 costs nobody warns you about. The first is fuel. A mega ship burns around 250 tons of fuel a day. At sea, that's well over $100,000 a day, every day, before a single passenger spends $1. The ship is a furnace that you are paying to keep lit. The second is the flag. And this one is the real trick. Almost no major cruise ship flies the flag of the country it operates from. Carnival and Royal Caribbean register their ships in places like Panama, the Bahamas, and Liberia. Why? Because a U.S.-flagged ship would owe U.S. wages, U.S. labor law, and U.S. corporate tax. A foreign-flagged one doesn't. Thanks to a piece of the U.S. tax code, Carnival Corporation, one of the largest travel companies in the world, has paid an effective tax rate of close to 0% for years. The ship sails out of Miami every weekend. On paper, it has almost nothing to do with America at all. A cruise ship, it turns out, is a floating tax jurisdiction with a buffet. Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? Here's the thing that breaks people's brains. The ticket is barely profitable. Cruise lines sell the voyage almost at cost, sometimes below it. The fare exists to do one job: get a warm body on board. Because once you're on board, you're a captive customer in the most literal sense possible. You are in the middle of the ocean, and the only store for 1,000 miles is the one the cruise line owns. Picture it like this. Imagine a movie theater that gave away the tickets for free, then locked the doors for a week, and the only food, drinks, and entertainment inside came from one counter that they ran. That's a cruise ship. The fare is the free ticket. The locked doors are the Atlantic, so they sell you everything else. Drink packages, specialty restaurants on top of the free dining. Shore excursions booked through the ship at a fat markup. Wi-Fi, the spa, photos, and the casino. Yes, there's a casino in international waters where the rules barely exist. On a typical cruise, a passenger spends another $60 to $70 a day on top of the fare, and that onboard spending is high margin in a way the ticket never is. Roughly a third of a cruise line's revenue comes from things you buy after you've already paid to get on. The ticket fills the ship. The ship is just the vending machine. Okay, so that's the money. Now, the machine that protects it. Start with the crew. A megaship runs on 2,000 or more workers, hired largely from the Philippines, Indonesia, and India, on contracts that can run 6 to 9 months with no days off. Their base pay is low by design because the cruise line quietly transfers the cost of paying them on to you. through the gratuity of around $16 to $20 a day that gets automatically added to your bill. You think you're tipping, you're actually covering payroll. Then there's occupancy. A hotel that runs 70% full is doing fine. A cruise ship that runs 70% full is bleeding. Cruise lines target and routinely exceed 100% occupancy because the ship costs almost the same to sail, whether it's half empty or packed to the rails. Every empty cabin is pure loss with the engines already running. So the entire pricing system, all those last-minute deals and discounts, exists to do one thing: never ever sail with an empty bed. And the whole operation runs on a brutally simple formula. Fill the ship, multiplied by days at sea, multiplied by onboard spend per passenger, multiplied by how cheaply you can run the steel. Every deck, every drink package, every free event herding you past the shops exists to push one of those four numbers up. So, with full ships, captive customers, and almost no tax, why would anyone ever lose money on a cruise line? Because everything outside that formula is a fist fight. Fuel swings with the oil market and you can't pass it on fast enough. Ships have to go into dry dock every few years, a refurbishment that costs tens of millions and takes the ship, your only moneymaker, out of service for weeks. Ports charge fees, itineraries get wrecked by weather and politics. And then there are the two things that can sink the entire company overnight. The first is disaster. In 2012, the Costa Concordia, owned by Carnival, ran aground off the coast of Italy and capsized. 32 people died. The salvage operation became the most expensive in maritime history, running close to $2 billion. One ship, one bad night, one captain's decision. And the loss eclipsed what the vessel ever earned. The second is the one that proved the whole model's fragility. In 2020, the world stopped. And the cruise industry didn't slow down. It went to zero. Ships sat empty at anchor, still costing millions a month to maintain, with no revenue at all. Carnival's debt ballooned past $30 billion. An industry built on the iron rule of never sail empty was suddenly not allowed to sail at all. The thing that made it efficient, enormous fixed costs spread across a packed ship, became the thing that nearly killed it the moment the ship couldn't fill. The ocean gives you a captive customer. It also traps all your money inside a single piece of steel that any storm, virus, or headline can freeze in place. Step back for a second, because the economics here are genuinely strange. A cruise line has one of the most reliable revenue engines in travel. It knows roughly how many passengers it can hold, how many days a year the ship can sail, and how much each of those passengers will spend once they're trapped on board with nothing else to do. A hotel can't control whether you leave the building for dinner. A cruise ship can, because there's no building to leave. And yet cruise operators carry debt that would terrify an airline, run on margins thinner than the steel hull, and can be brought to their knees by a single bad season. Because the model only works at scale and at sea, the moment the ship stops moving. Dry dock, disaster, pandemic, the most efficient machine in travel becomes the most expensive paperweight in the world. It's the same trade every time. A near-guaranteed captive customer bolted to a fixed asset that you cannot pause, cannot hide, and cannot easily sell. So let's pull it together and answer the real question. How much do you actually make if you do this right? Scenario 1. A single mid-sized ship, 3,000 passengers, bought for around $800 million. Run it full, year-round, in the Caribbean. Between fares and that all-important onboard spending, you're looking at a few $100 million in annual revenue and an operating profit in a good year of maybe 20 to 25% of it. Payback measured in years, not months, and every one of those years is exposed to fuel, weather, and the next headline. Scenario 2, you don't own a ship, you own the fleet. Carnival Corporation runs more than 90 ships across brands like Carnival, Princess, Holland America, and Cunard, and pulls in roughly $25 billion a year. The man who built it, Ted Arison, started Carnival in 1972 with a single second-hand ship that ran aground on its very first voyage. His family became billionaires several times over. That's the whole business in one image. The ship is just steel that burns money. The empire is what happens when you own enough of them that the ocean works for you instead of against you. So if you decide to buy a cruise ship, remember the one rule that actually matters. Nobody gets rich selling the cruise. They get rich selling everything that happens once you can't get off the boat.